Thanks for joining in again. Today, we're going to review a early model BMW 335i. That's right, specification. Did you know it is almost identical to the 2JZ powered Toyota Supra from the 90s? We're gonna get into it now. Even though this is not the latest and greatest from BMW, it is in fact one of the more attractive models in the 3 Series lineups that BMW has ever created. Look at the simple flowing lines over the fenders. Very functional but attractive. You've got creases in the hood. You've got this wonderful crease that runs down the length of the car. 18-inch wheels, which just balance the car just perfectly. Sure, 19s, some would argue, are more attractive. However, 19s are very, very harsh on rough roads, as I have here in Canada. However, if you have great roads where you live, I would agree, 19-inch wheels are the way to go. It just fills it out perfectly. Also, you got this little side marker, and if you look at the trim here, I have the non-shadow trim. Although because the car is silver, it's a very balanced look. The silver and the brushed aluminum look very, very sharp together. Now looking at the back, it's a very clean design. It's not cluttered, it's not bunched up. A lot of the modern BMWs have a lot of open vents and creases, and while in a lot of ways that looks more aggressive, in other ways it looks a bit cluttered. This is a very clean look. You've got the aftermarket pipes on this particular car, but just the fact that you've got dual pipes on here in general makes the car look really, really sharp. And then we have the distinctive angel eyes that you see on most BMWs today, especially the 3 Series. Now on the E90 and E92s like this, it's a lot more rounded off and completes the look of the overall car design. Instead of being wide open and vertical like the original cars, it is more rounded off. That being said, this is a lot sharper looking and more consistent with the round circles with the original design than the new cars, which are a little bit more squared off and flattened down with LEDs. Sure, they look great from a lighting perspective, but true to the BMW flavor, this is likely one of the best designed angel eye setups on BMWs today. This here is what everybody refers to as the N54. That is BMW's inline-6 3-liter twin turbo engine that produces 305 brake horsepower and about 300 and change in terms of foot-pounds of torque. Specification-wise, it is almost bang on with the original Toyota Supra 2JZ car. Now, the difference, as I said before, is the N54 here is an open deck design. So the vertical sleeves around each cylinder has an open top on it. So in other words, it's slightly fragile than the closed deck design that you'll find in a 2JZ or that you'll find in a modern day M3 or M4 with the S55. Those also have a closed deck design, likely a little bit more durable for heating. The cooling systems here are a little more fragile. That being said, this N54 is the most tunable BMW so far. Better even than some of the later models. Why? Because some of the firmware and the software is more hackable. The tuners have really dove in and were able to really do a number in terms of getting a lot of programs to dial in the software settings to make these cars really wake up. That being said, they always need great fueling. Whether you put meth injection or alcohol fueling, whatever it be, you do have to plump it up if you start cranking up the boost. However, like I said, the bottom end of these cars are bulletproof. These are one of the best tuner cars on the market today. Forget about just being a BMW, it is one of the best tuner engines anywhere at any time. As a matter of fact, it's not uncommon to see cars like this produce 6, 7, even 800 horsepower to the wheels, no less. Not just flywheel, wheel horsepower. These things can be absolute rocket ships. I'm sure you've seen lots of videos on the internet where these things blow the doors off McLarens. You can really make these things move. So another thing that makes these cars so tunable and so enjoyable is they're honestly the last of a dying breed. As you know, the latest G23 series BMW no longer is available with a manual transmission. What do we have here? We have the third pedal and we have the manual transmission right here. So number one, this is one of the latest generations that you're able to find a manual gearbox with, and a manual generally holds up better too when you're tuning a car. Pushing the power, squeezing the limits of its capabilities, the manual transmission does a better job of allowing the driver to control the power to the torque to the wheels without having to break parts. Automatic transmissions can be durable, but often they were designed for their factory specifications and often don't allow for too much deviation outside of that. So not only that, the E90 here has a great interior. Often you could get different variations of finish. Some of these cars have the iDrive system incorporated here. This one does not. Often you can either get wood grain or you can get aluminum trim, manual transmission, or leather seats, sunroof. Honestly, they are decked right out. It really does give you a great seating position, and it's comfortable. When you're rolling the gears and you've got 700 horsepower, you want to make sure that you're in a seat that's going to hold you, and the stability that you get from these bolsters is second to none. It really does a great job of holding you in, but it's still comfortable for daily use. This isn't a race seat, doesn't have the hard carbon backs on it, but it still does hold you into the seats very, very well. It's a nice balance. And then there's the back seat, which actually has a lot of room. As we look back there, have a peek back there. There's actually room for 2 grown adults. You've got storage here for general junk. You've got a pass through here. You can flip that down. Actually has a built-in cup holder. You've got down here a vent control and an ashtray as needed. Lots of provisions back here. Honestly, makes it a very, very comfortable place and enjoyable spot to actually sit as well. And then looking at the dash, we'll do a quick start. Oh, by the way, you've got these little guys. Pull the seatbelt out so you can reach it, grab it, and put it down in there. But then we look at the dash layout here. Very simplistic. As you can see, we've got 2 analog gauges. Very conventional, but functional no less. Gives you just enough information there. Typical BMW, it's not uncommon to have an engine light on. And all the information that you need is essentially at your fingertips. You can even do a service reset on here as well. So everything's very functional, attractive, and basic. As well, the positive thing with this is you get less glare. A lot of the digital displays these days actually are susceptible to a severe amount of glare that you get, and you can really wash out the display quite badly. And I've noticed that with some of the BMWs. The displays are really, really sharp and spectacular in the night or in dusky times, but during bright light in the middle of the afternoon, often you get a pretty significant amount of wash to the point where you can barely see some of the gauges. You don't really have that in a situation like this because this is more of a conventional gauge cluster, and the plastic enclosure is a little bit concave here to the point where you really don't see much wash on this at all. Very easy to see in day or night. So setting off here in first gear, these BMWs are just beautiful to drive. The gearboxes are always buttery smooth. The inline 6-cylinder engines are actually one of the trademark elements of these cars. I mean, BMW's known for their inline 6-cylinder engines, and just because this is a turbo, it doesn't mean you lose any of that silkiness. As a matter of fact, you get a significant amount of that smooth driving experience, very linear as well. Even though it's turbocharged, it's still a very linear power delivery. There's just more of it than a normally aspirated. For example, in a 325, 328, or a 330 that are normally aspirated in the same generation, the 335 just adds a significant amount of punch to the driving experience. So the drive is actually very smooth, but even with the 18-inch wheels and the sport suspension that this car comes equipped with, it still isn't jarring. There's a little bit of that extra hit every time you hit a tar patch or a split in the road. You do feel it, but it's not jarring as in some of the modern M cars. It's still a very supple ride for the most part, but does a great job of handling the car in the corners and allows you to stay flat and relatively neutral through the corners. It does a great job of keeping the car on track, and it's very balanced as well due to the nearly perfect front to back weight distribution on these cars. As well, even with this car has downpipes and muffler delete on it, it's still very comfortable on the inside. Sure, it spits out some noise on the back end of this car because of the cat bypass. However, it's very, very quiet. As a matter of fact, the cabin is a very quiet and serene place. That's very typical for BMWs anyway. 5 Series steps it up a bit more, but even in this 3 Series, which is by no means their top flagship car, it does a great job of filtering out a lot of the noises. Now, the other thing to note is the steering. That's been a complaint from a lot of the later generation 3 Series cars where the steering is just a little too simulated. It's electric, it's a little bit too quick, and it doesn't give you enough of that direct feedback. This car, on the other hand, is not like that at all. These cars don't suffer from any of that. The steering feedback is awesome on this car. Its steering is very quick and direct, and honestly, the whole driving experience is as you would expect. it's the ultimate driving machine, and as a result, steering is great, brakes are strong, acceleration is brisk, handling is as you would expect it. There's really no ask that you don't have from this car. Now the question is this really a 2JZ replacement? Largely, I would say yes, it is actually a very good replacement for the 2JZ in the sense that they both have similar displacement, both twin turbos, and both very tunable. That being said, the Toyota Supra generally costs a little bit more money to get the power out of it versus the BMW, which is very, very simple. And with add-ons like the JB4 Piggyback or any of the Flash tuners, it takes very little money. $1,000 can really pump out a lot of power out of this car. As a matter of fact, a Flash or a JB4, downpipes, and you can pump this thing up to 400 horsepower with relative ease on pump fuel. The Toyota Supra twin turbo, slightly more robust, but it takes you a lot more money to get there. It takes more money to get that car to that point. Both great cars, both very tunable. So I know you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and hit this link over here. That'll take you to another great review on my channel. To see you guys real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.